While Conrad had to grow from his immature and childish actions to resolve his personal conflict, Sally had to grow from her own peevish actions to resolve her own. The end result is the two of them coming together to resolve conflict that involves themselves and the cat, who unabashedly interferes in their lives. Sally is a brother to Conrad and a preteen child to Joan. In the beginning of the film, Sally is seen as overruling and mature for her age when it comes to communicating conflict with Conrad. She's perceived by Joan as mature, while Conrad's is as immature. Sally's perception as a suck-up intertwines with Conrad's perception as a troublemaker, with two polar opposite siblings rarely agreeing on the same terms. Despite their tumultuous relationship, they come together to fix up the cluster of problems the cat has brought upon them, managing their conflict. When the house turns to shambles, Sally shares the blame that Conrad places onto himself for everything that had happened. This can be perceived as a turning point for Sally's development, as earlier she had always let Conrad take the blame for his immature actions and behavior, insinuating her good girl image and being uber obedient. As a form of self-perception in the end, Sally remarks that Conrad is a pretty good brother, acknowledging his maturity and taking the blame for the house's destruction and disastrous events. The cat's funnometer describes Sally as a control freak and Conrad as a bedwetter, seemingly confirming the audience's worst suspicions about these characters. However, after the three of them work together to save the house, his funnometer describes Sally and Conrad as just right. Sally's use of communication in resolving her conflict with Conrad is an indication of her character growth, shown throughout, making her a classic case of character redemption. Communicating through resolution of a conflict can really help aid in the growth of a relationship. Whether it's romantically or relatively involved, resolution is key, and we see these two characters take the time to resolve what was once bitter sibling fights to mature sibling acknowledgement. In the Managing Conflict Through Communication scholarly journal, we can see that managing conflict is a long and hard process that will benefit both parties in the end. One part of this process involves de-escalating the conflict while taking into consideration all the factors that play a part in its formation. This step is in perfect relation to how Conrad and Sally resolve their own conflict. In taking a look at theirs, the two factors that come into play are the double standard of treatment from their mother, Joan, and the disastrous escapades that the cat brings into their home. Despite their external issues with how they and Joan perceive each other, we see that when they come together to relieve the mess the cat had made and seek out the good in each other, managing conflict benefits both of their relationships more so than they might think. To summarize, Conrad, who starts out as a destructive preteen, learns how to be less destructive, and why he is, and how to stop being destructive through conflict and managing conflict through communication with others. Sally, who starts out as a control freak 8-year-old child, learns how to be more loose and is more ready to go with the flow by the end of our story, with her through correctly managing conflict and communication with others. Kat, who is seemingly destructive with a purpose, eventually ends our story by teaching the kids how to grow from situations such as conflict and communication with others in order to flourish into being better human beings. By realizing how important communication is between the siblings, it makes it really easy to want to be better to help those around us by simply just communicating to get to a better understanding of one another, which is a life lesson we could all use. The idea of managing conflict through communication is shown to be a surefire thing for the parties involved to reach a point of compromise. Whether it's talking or just figuring out a solution non-verbally, there's always an answer.